morning to you. And yes, where I am, it is morning. It's very early morning. What we're doing today is we're getting ready to get back on the 32 forward body work. Let's take a look at what my aim is for today's work. Okay, when we last left this project, it was moving along. I had block sanded with 320 grit and found a few more imperfections and laid down the putty for it, as you can see there, and there. And I think a couple of places over here, right there, there, all the way around the door. The door's edges have been a little bit of a problem on this car. But what we're going to do today is we're going to feather those out. And if we need to, put some more primer on it. But the next step beyond that is I'm going to try to block it with 400 wet and see where we are. So let's get started. Okay, we're about an hour into the work, and just a reminder, when you're doing this stuff, be sure and use protection, because this is dust that gets in your lungs, your nose, and everything else, and it's certainly not healthy for you. But what I'm about to show you is why, even if you don't have a meticulous nature, you need to develop a meticulous nature when you're doing body work, and also calm down and avoid frustration, because my normal attitude would have me wanting to throw the car out the window, but I'm trying to take my time. I originally thought, or hoped, I didn't really think, but I hoped I might be close to the 400 wet sand body stage. But as I went over the places that I had sanded, of course you find more spots. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Some of this stuff only shows up in certain light, and some of it doesn't show up at all until you get your final coat on. What you're seeing here is this is some contours that I did right here, some feathering. I saw some rough spots here under certain light, where this of course all goes back to the body seams, the seams in the body where the molds were put together. And this kind of makes me aware of the fact that the Cobra is going to be a lot rougher than this, because this body is much more refined than the Cobra body was, which is fairly typical. You do get what you pay for. But this I was successful in feathering out. The problem is if we revisit this area here, which of course the body seam, if you recall, came up here and then went forward, you can't really see it, but if you feel right here, I've got a low spot right there that's going to require just a little bit more putty. Also, feathering the places up here, this is starting to shape up really nicely. This feels good, so I think I'm going to squirt some primer over that and hopefully come back, and that'll be good. Body edges, which are always rough on fiberglass, these were good. Then I came over here. This is the area that I had spread some filler. I've got that feathered out. That looks nicely. Coming up here, this feathered out really nicely with sandpaper, no problems there. But as I came down here, got a little bit closer, this right here looks good. Got to come in there and sand that. That's just a little bit of residual putty. But you'll notice when I came down here, spotted that. That's going to require some work, and also spotted these places right here, which were covered up and you couldn't hardly see them. But once I ran over with sandpaper, I did it. It's not a big deal, but it just means I need to take a step back, and all body work is two steps forward, 1 step back, or sometimes 2 steps forward and 47 steps back. You just have to keep at it and work the problem. So I'm going to come back here in just a moment and glaze over that with some of the 3M glazing putty. Back here, I had a high spot that I worked. I was able to successfully feather that. These places here worked out nicely, so I think I may be good to go there. Found another spot here. Let me see if I can get the camera on it. Sorry about that. There we are. See that right there? A little bit of a divot in the fiberglass. So I've got to get that to work. Just little things like this all over the body that you've got to have the patience for and continue working the problem. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my glazing putty out. I'm going to glaze over those areas and then wait patiently for it to dry. Could take a couple hours for it to dry. Once it does dry, unlike some of the other areas, this is very, very thin work, so it should dry faster than it did in some other areas where I had to really glob it on to fill a significant divot in the paint. I also started touching on the jambs. Eventually I hope to pull the doors off of it and because I've got to paint the door jambs and everything too, so I can start working those in. The good news about door jambs and stuff like that is it's a lot easier to do because you're not trying to get top-notch finish on it. You're just simply trying to get it to where it will accept paint and look good, because you know those areas, that's where you step in and out of the car, it's where you shut the door. Those areas are going to have some problems anyway, so you just have to basically get it as good as you can. This is another area I've got to fill right there that I found. Looks like I've got one more place. See if I can get it to focus right here. I just now spotted that. Did not spot that before, so that's another one I'm going to have to mark and putty over that as well. Next stop, glazing putty and more sanding. One thing I'm probably demonstrating to people who work on cars really know this, but a lot of people who are just getting started in the hobby don't. There's a reason paint and body work is so expensive. I've got many hours in this already. Yes, it is getting closer, but I'm still a long way away from paint. This is the part that takes so much time. Getting the body ready for paint. Of course, I could squirt paint on it right now and it would look horrible because these little blemishes really start showing up when you get paint on them. Anybody can hold a paint gun and learn how to paint a car. But this is the real work right here, in my opinion anyway. Now, some of you paint and body guys may disagree. And of course, there's some colors, like some of the transparent colors, the candies and stuff like that. That's a whole new realm and way different than just holding a gun and shooting it. I realize that. But for just a standard non-metallic red color that I'm spraying on this is where the work is done, because you have to have these places done or else it will show up on your paint. Okay, back at it. This section here is proving to be kind of difficult because it is right in the middle of a compound radius. You've got the curvature here, you've got the curvature here. What I had to do was I took my putty knife, put the putty in the center of it, bend it like this, and then contour up so I can thicken the area where the low spot is and get it off with that. Now what I'm going to do once this dries is I'm going to come in here with a piece of sandpaper, probably 320, and cup it with my hand and go around this corner trying to contour that up. But as you can see, I think you can tell that I've got it built up a lot more here, which is where the dip was, than I do in other areas. And of course you can sand it off just like I did in these areas here, where you can see you feather it off and the only places that remain are the low spots. And while this looks kind of bad, it's certainly filled in nicely and it's good to go. Over here, a lot easier because it's on flat panels. Just simply spread it on, wait for it to dry, sand down, fill in the low spots. Same here, here, and here. What you can see here is the more I go, the fewer incidents of putty I'm having to use. That's the idea is, you know, if you recall the first run through with filling in the low spots, I had them all over the car. The car looked like it had a case of the measles. Now I've just got a few select areas. What I'll do, of course, is continue sanding once this dries, and if I find more spots, I'll continue to do this. But I'm at the 320 stage for a while. If I can ever get past the 320 stage and get up to the 400 stage, that's where I'm finishing it out and eliminating the 320 scratches with 400, eliminate the 400 scratches with 600, and on up the ladder until it's smooth enough and ready to accept a paint job. This right here is the part that takes the longest. But I have to admit happily, the body is a long way from where it was when I started. Okay, while I'm waiting on the putty to dry, I've decided to get to work on this hood. The hood is going to be rough. It's never going to be perfect because it's basically just an inexpensive Speedway Motors part. I went ahead and I've removed my mounting here so I could get the sanding done. Of course, those were just pop riveted in. I can pop those right back in when we're ready. These edges here, you know, it's got some cracks and some chips taken out of the fiberglass right here I'm going to have to fix. I'm going to try to come in here and fill this. Just skim this real good, that way that smooths that out, which I'll get to work on that here in just a moment. And get to work on this hood, see if I can get it in primer today too. Alright, more work I'm getting done. This is the grill shell. I'm scuffing the black primer coating that comes on the part, getting it ready to lay down some primer on it, and also my headlights, as you can see here. The good news about reproduction parts like this is they don't take as much work as other stuff does. The bad news, of course, is that they do take some work, and I've got to get it in primer before I can start spotting the low spots on it. But I'm about to spread some filler onto this and hang this up. Once the filler dries, I'll sand it off. Still waiting on the putty to dry over here. We continue. Okay, this is sanded down now. I'm not really sure if I feel anything as far as a low place here goes or not, but I'm going to spray some more primer on all the places that I've sanded down. If, and I hesitate to say this because I don't think it's going to be ready, but if those places are good enough, the next step is to go and block the entire body with 400 wet sanding. I won't know for sure until I get some primer on this, because when you put primer on it, it reveals some things that the sanded system like this doesn't. So I'll know more then. I'm also going to spray the first coat of primer on my grill shell, my headlights, and my hood. I actually left my filler at my house, so I'm not going to be able to start working this hood rough. Although, since I am going to be spreading filler on the Cobra in the coming days, I may take this hood with me and rough it in there, and then bring it back, of course, when it's ready to paint, because I've got a lot of work to do on this hood. This hood is probably the roughest part left, but I'm going to spray some spot primer over the places that I've sanded today, see where we are, and go from there. You know, my dad, like all fathers, I suppose, always used to think that I didn't listen to him. But I did. And one of the things I listened to him on was when working on cars, especially doing body work, you have to reach a point where you think that, you know what, it's good enough. You have to realize it's never going to be perfect, but it's good enough to get what you want to get done on the car. Let me show you what I've gotten done so far today. Wet sanding in 400 grit is done. And I have to say, when you're wet sanding like this, you're doing it by hand, you're up close and personal with it. And I think, of course, I've got to wash it off and get it cleaned up and everything and get a look at it, which I will do here shortly. But honestly, if the scratches are down to 400 grit, I think I'm going to take it to 600 next. And we may be good to go, for the body at least. It actually cleaned up very, very nicely. Everything is looking good. I'm pretty happy with it. Of course, I might be less happy with it once I wash it off and expose some things that I'm not seeing right now. But the thing is it's definitely much better. This area right here, this is where I had to smooth it out. This is never going to be 100%, but it's close. It's very, very close, as a matter of fact, and I think I'm going to run with it. Got the grill shell and the headlights and primer. Going to get ready working those. Those are going to take a lot less work than the hood or the body. And speaking of the hood, if you remember, there were ridges that I needed to fill on both ends of it. First round is in the books. I've got that done. Of course, I've got to open up some of the holes I accidentally filled in, which is no big deal. I can get a drill and do that in just a second. But it looks like the first round is good. The next step for this, of course, is to get it into primer and start the filling and the spot putty process on it, exactly like the body was done. But as you can see here, I've got this ridge smoothed out. It looks nice. It's contoured. Of course, it's still in the rough stage. But now I've got something to work with. This hood was very inexpensive. I think it was about $200 from Speedway Motors. A root lib metal hood, reproduction hood that's made of steel for these are anywhere from $1,000 and up. So I definitely went less expensive on this. I got this taken care of right here. I've got a little bit of a boo-boo right here that I didn't see when I had the filler. That's no problem. Spot putty can take care of that. But what's up next for this, after I get these holes taken back out, is I'm going to prime it, and we'll start body working it just like we did that. All right, more work done. Been at it all day. Been a very, very long day. Just got through spraying some more primer, and let me show you what the results are. The more I go, the slicker it looks. Still got a few very small problem areas, but I think what I'm going to do, I kind of laid the primer on thick this time. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to wet it 400 one more time, and then immediately go back with 600, and we may be there as far as the body's concerned. Now, as far as the hood's concerned, we're just now starting to get this worked. We got some rough edges around the front, but I've got those seams gone. Now it's a matter of smoothing it out. That's where the glazing putty comes into play. So that's looking good. Got primer nice and thick on the headlights and on the grill shell. Those I think will be ready for 400 or 600 the next time down as well. So 400 and 600 on those pieces. The hood I'm going to probably spread some glazing putty on as soon as the primer dries before I get out of here. And then it's a matter of coming back next time and doing the 400 and 600 work in the hood, and we are that much closer to red paint. The only thing I've got left to do this trip is to spread the glazing putty on the edges of the hood, which I'm not going to show that. You guys have seen that 100 times. But I think I'm going to simply do that, then park everything, come down for the next trip, and hopefully, if all goes well, as my father used to say, good Lord willing and the creeks don't rise, we may be ready for the paint in the trip after the next one when I do the wet sanding. So keep your fingers crossed on that. Thank you for joining me today. Got more stuff coming up. Be sure and hit subscribe. We're actually up to 265 subscribers. Very happy about that. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Tell your friends and share if you need to. And we got more Cobra stuff coming up. I'll probably, when I get back to McKinney, I will do some filler work on the Cobra and get that going. Thanks for joining us. Come back again.